Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Matrix Reloaded, starring Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne Moss, Hugo Weaving, Gloria Foster, and Jada Pinkett Smith, directed by the Wachowski brothers. Now, before I get into this movie, I did see it in theaters, all excited after the first one, because I saw the first one not in theaters, but on video when it first came out. And I remember having a kick ass time with that movie as a kid. So let's see how it is with this one. See if it's as good a time as the first one. Let's get into it. We open with Trinity, returned by Carrie-Anne Moss, jumping off a motorcycle and fighting off some cops as she calls an operator and says, "I'm in." And next thing you know, she's firing guns at an agent, which felt a little weird, as she eventually gets hit and smashes a car, and the next thing you know, it was Neo's nightmare, as Neo, returned by Keanu Reeves, can't sleep because he's worried about losing Trinity in the Matrix. And as an opening scene, it kind of bothers me because he's supposed to be the one, but he believes his powers aren't going to save her. And the arc of Neo is being afraid to fail and lose Trinity. And is this the best move this movie can do? And if so, I can go with it, but unfortunately, am I buying? But unfortunately, I am not buying it with the performance of Keanu Reeves. And honestly, he's not very good in this movie, as he's very one note in my opinion. Morpheus, returned by Lawrence Fishburne, has a new operator named, what was his name? Link, yeah, and the driver ship of the ship named Link, who's here for comic relief, despite he's not trying to be, as he was kind of funny in this movie, and the dialogue is super quiet. It was hard to hear a goddamn word they're saying. Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus go to a meeting with Niobe, played by Jada Pinkett Smith, talking about a warning sent from the Osiris from the Animatrix, as she and Morpheus were a thing before the original movie. And by a thing, I mean they were a couple. And I get the impression Morpheus is more the most hated person on Zion because of his beliefs, whereas last time he was the perfect person to believe in Neo as being the one, but here he's a disgrace, which is shitting on the original film, and I thought, what the fuck is that about? Meanwhile, agents led by Agent Smith, returned by Hugo Weaving, gives Neo a message saying he set him free, and if I recall, he died at the end of the last movie, but now I think about it, Neo sent him to the real world, as he'll be disguised as a civilian of Zion later in the film, and upgrades him and comes in the real world, and Neo fights them off with the wire, and the wire fu is not as an improvement over the original, but funny and true story is Keanu Reeves added some moves, and the crew were following him around, which is why they put it in the film. And good for Keanu to add some moves into the scene, as Agent Smith added some clones to look like himself, which felt very irritating, and the score to that scene was noticeably awful. As he flies to see the Oracle, returned by Gloria Foster, as she died after filming this movie, and we get a replacement in the next film, which feels terribly off. And I'm so glad they didn't do the Ghostbusters Afterlife thing where the CGI the dead person. When I get to Ghostbusters Afterlife, you'll see what I mean. And it would have been a problem with the next movie. Their ship with their Nebuchadnezzar enter their home Zion, and I'm going to be honest and say I like the look of Zion for the future, as they have robots and machine guns on them, and we'll see that in the next movie. Niobe's new boyfriend, Commander Locke, who's played by the actor who's in the DC Extended Universe named Harry Lennox, and he has a beef with Morpheus for disobeying his orders, and again, this quiet dialogue. And again, this quiet dialogue while turning the volume up and down during quiet times versus action scenes, as it was bothering me to begin with. And did the Wachowskis check the sound boom on the microphone? Because it doesn't feel like it. While the kid from last time in the segment, A Kid's Story, as he's always happy to see Neo and talks with him, and he wants to join the Nebuchadnezzar, which is where Neo is in. And after he and Link get off the elevator, The next floor, they get to the next floor, and Trinity goes to as Neo gets a lot of prayers. And is this guy supposed to be Jesus? Because without today's beard of Keanu Reeves, he's not pulling it off. While Link goes to his own house and sees his girlfriend Z and her sister and her kids, as she's led to believe Link joining the Nebuchadnezzar is a bad idea, as Morpheus is crazy, which is so goddamn obvious that Morpheus is hated by the world of Zion for his beliefs. Morpheus gives a speech for Zion, which fell in funny in not a good way. For example, for 100 years, we have fought these machines. It just felt very funny in a less amusing kind of way, and the dialogue is a little corny in my perspective. Meanwhile, Neo and Trinity have sexual intercourse, and I thought, really, with that? As it has no place in this movie whatsoever. And the score in those scenes, as well as everyone dancing, was misplaced, in my honest opinion. We get Agent Smith turning someone named Bane into his clone, and as he gets in the real life or world, as Neo wakes up and gets a visit from one of Zion's counselors, as Neo can't sleep and tells the counselor why he can't sleep, and Neo gets a message from the Oracle and gets the crew in the Nebuchadnezzar to take off as Bane almost kills Neo until the kid calls him and gives him the spoon from the first film as he goes in the Matrix to see the Oracle and meets her bodyguard, Seraph, as they have a brief fight to prove if Neo is the one because he has many enemies. She has many enemies. And make sure of it. And what the fuck was the point of this scene? Seraph brings Neo to the Oracle as she tells him in order to save the world is to stop the program like a computer, which is very complicated unless if you're an expert on computers, which I'm not, while telling her about his dream with Trinity, and she tells him about the Keymaker, which is a nice shot of scene, and as it is impressive looking thus far, Agent Smith comes to Neo and have a conversation about how Agent Smith came back to life, and brings in his clones and starts fighting Neo, which is prolonged for damn sure, but there's at least three things I enjoyed about with this fight. One is when he flies around with the rail. Two is when he is making a circle kick around the clones of Agent Smith. And three, the explosion of Agent Smith's flying everywhere, which did crack me up, which is why, in my opinion, this is the best fight in the whole movie, with some shots that might make people somewhat dizzy, but at some point he might have to fly away, which was convenient, like a Superman thing. Commander Locke is frustrated to hear two of his ships, including Niobe's, to help aid the Nebuchadnezzar, while Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus go to a restaurant to visit Priestess and his wife Persephone, played by Monica Bellucci, to talk about where the Keymaker is at, while a beautiful woman gets a special dessert from Priestess, while Neo watches her eating the dessert as she gets a sexual feeling from the cake, which is weird, as the scene is absolutely fucking weird, as Priestess gives them a message that says time is almost up, as he doesn't give up the Keymakers, so Persephone offers a trade for a kiss from Neo from the Keymaker, and has no choice but to kiss her, which is an awkward scene for damn sure. Persephone makes them a mansion takes them to a mansion to shoot Priestess bodyguards and tells her husband what she did, and she gives Neo the Keymaker, and Priestess comes in to recapture the Keymaker with the two guys with ghost powers, while Trinity and Morpheus go after them as well as the Keymaker, and Neo fighting with all the Priestess bodyguards. The choreography with that fight did feel obvious, and it looked awful, while Persephone is a horrible character anyways. And Monica Bellucci did come out with another movie that same year called Tears of the Sun, which was a terrible film, and if I were to review that film, you'll know why. Trinity, Morpheus, and the Keymaker get to the parking garage, and they get in the car and have a prolonged chase sequence and agents coming along, and these scenes are good stunts. But the problem is people copy shit like this in real life when they shouldn't in general. But again, it was very endless, and eventually the twins do die, which was a fucking relief. While Niobe saves Morpheus's life while fighting with an agent, as two trucks smash into each other, and Neil saving each and every single last one of them, which is way too convenient in my opinion. While machines are getting closer to Zion, everyone has a meeting in the Matrix as they discuss the plan to save the real world as well as the Matrix, and Morpheus tells everyone his beliefs, he believes the war can end tonight if they stick to the plan, as Trinity tries to call Neo and Morpheus but miss them as they go with the Keymaker to a room I'll get to in a few minutes. Trinity disregards Neo's deal to stay out of the Matrix as she goes in and is encountered by an agent, while Neo and Morpheus fight the army of Agent Smiths, and Neo flies them, and while the Keymaker sneaks around to doors and unfortunately gets shot, as I didn't honestly care at this point. Neo enters the room with the architect who built the Matrix and finds out he's not just the one, he's the sixth one, and have a conversation about choice, which was banal, and in my honest opinion, it takes way too long, and I was very confused. Neo makes the choice to save Trinity instead of Zion as he sees his nightmare come to life, as Trinity is shot in the stomach, as Neo does save her and gets the bullet out of her, and Neo touches her heart to beat, which scares the shit out of me. And they go back to the real world as Neo says the prophecy isn't real, as Sentinels appear to put a bomb in the Nebuchadnezzar ship and blows it up as the crew gets out before the bomb explodes. And while they're outside, Neo feels the Sentinels coming towards them as he kills them and knocks himself out as he gets hospitalized by a crew where they're treating Bane, as credits roll to a teaser to the Matrix Revolutions. And the climax annoyed the living hell out of me, as the movie makers expect another $20 out of me, just annoying the living shit out of me. Like, if you've seen those two Fantastic Beasts films, you get why. And if you see my reviews, you know why. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.9 out of 10. This is a confusing movie that hopefully the next movie can answer, as it wasn't answered here. And I wanted to care, but I can't if the movie isn't making me care for the characters. The movie was absolutely banal, as the score was at times very distracting, as it was annoying, and so is this movie. This series is doing what Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings is doing, which is shooting back to back and flipping me upside down to grab $20 out of my wallet, which is very irritating in my opinion. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with the Matrix Revolutions. And until then, it ends tonight.